Hey everybody, Professor Snart here. Happy Friday. Supposed to get warmer, although it's what is it, 8:30 or so when I'm recording this, and I just came into the office and it's still pretty cold outside. It's that wind that gets you. Okay, look at all our happy faces there. Doesn't that look nice? Let's see, where are we? Due dates. So we're just finishing up Unit 3, at least the main part, kind of with that reply due date hanging out there. And now we move into Unit 4, which is going to be a busy one for us. I don't think it's busy in the sense of more work necessarily, but there are multiple kind of smaller things that we're doing. Okay. In addition to, like I'd mentioned, or like you may have seen in a text that I'd sent out, and then you'll see in our units list here, there's a little survey that I'm doing. Super simple for those of you who've seen it. It takes 5 minutes, I'm guessing. Just kind of asking for your feedback about our first online course or online honors course here at COD. They're a pretty rare thing generally, I think, but it's certainly the first one here at COD. So this is a bit tricky, and I really appreciate those who've done the survey so far. It's anonymous, just so you know. So what do I want to say, or how do I want to say this? So first of all, it's early in the term. I think the term for me is going really fast, but it's still pretty early. So it's kind of hard to do like a real, how are things going? You know, you still may be kind of waiting to see how things are going a little bit, but we're deep enough that you have maybe a sense of the course. But it's not really just a typical course evaluation or instructor evaluation, since A, it's early, but also because we're kind of interested in you know, this aspect of it, and is an online honors course even a possibility? And maybe this is actually a simple question for you and I'm just making it more complicated. And hopefully things are going great. I mean, if they're not, tell me, and well, if realistic to do so, we'll make them great. Realistic to do so, remember that part. But the thing that's a bit complicated, I think maybe more from my end maybe, is that the honors program here at COD is still working with, or continues to work with, how to define itself, like what makes honors honors and non-honors non-honors. And it gets sort of weird, maybe behind the scenes, if we start saying that, well, in honors courses we do more collaborative work, or multimedia projects, or something like that, right? That's a differentiation, but in education we know that those things are beneficial. They're not easy, but they're beneficial for students. We're learning to work in a group with others, to delegate sort of like who does what, and to collaborate effectively, to work in online collaboration modes, like in a shared document, for example, or something like that. And to produce things, especially for like a composition course, but even for a lit class, lots of other classes, not just to write essays or write papers, but to produce kind of like projects that are multimodal. They include audio, video, text, image, all of the things that we're kind of used to, and usually using digital tools to make that happen, whether it's the web or again, a shared doc, a Google slide, any of that kind of stuff. Okay, so we know that those things are beneficial and they work really well, so why would we just do them in an honors course? Do you get what I'm saying? It's sort of like, why wouldn't we do those things in other courses too? So anyway, for the longest time, honors, and again, not just at COD, but generally, kind of defined itself by what it did differently in an honors class versus non-honors. But that's becoming more challenging because, you know, of course, if it works in the honors framework and is effective just as a teaching method, then we really should be doing it across the board. So defining what honors is really challenging, I think, from the faculty or the programmatic side. And maybe you experience this as a student, maybe you don't. Okay. So, to make a long story even longer, I wonder if the question to you about, does this feel like an honors course, it kind of hinges on like how we define what makes honors honors. Do you get what I'm trying to like sort of work through here? So there's still questions, I think, on the program side about what honors is, even though I'm asking you the question here about your experience in this online honors course, and does it still feel like honors? And maybe that's not even the right question to ask, and maybe we're not even sure what honors feels like, and sometimes it really is just a feeling. It has to do with the motivation level of the students around you, of the degree of trust between you and the professor in terms of me giving you the leeway, latitude to do creative things, and trusting that you'll come through. And in my experience, honor students always do. Lots of other students do as well, just to be clear. So anyway, I am clearly, I realize now, sweating more about this than you probably are. So just do the survey if you haven't already. It takes 5 minutes, and let me know how things are going. And if you're actually having a technical problem or some other like real issue, definitely reach out to me directly and we'll see if we can resolve that. Hopefully people aren't, of course, but you never know. I should also point out that we'll do a couple more surveys when they make a little bit more sense, like at midterm and then right at the end of the course. By which point we'll have had the opportunity to, again, I think, grow as a class, like a community, which again is maybe one of those aspects of honors that's more of a touchy-feely, sort of an atmospheric thing. You just feel a little bit more connected with the students and with the professor maybe. So we'll have an opportunity to actually do a group project online. Yes, they can work. And to do a lot more of the creative stuff as we get a little bit deeper into our course. So hopefully this question will be less amorphous, maybe even for me, or maybe especially for me, by the time we get a little bit further onto it, or further into our course, I should say. Okay, I feel like I should just stop and quit, but I'm not going to. Here we go. Unit 4. We continue with our short fiction study. We're going to read a new story called The Yellow Wallpaper, which is a little bit longer, so you get budget time for that. It's not enormously long, but it's a bit longer than some of the others that we've read, but it's the only one that we're reading. But before we get into that, what we're going to do is work backwards a little bit into Unit 3 to look at the setting Padlet that people took pictures or posted pictures for. So there's no really good way of doing responses within the Padlet framework because of the way it lays things out and, you know, other stuff like that. So we're going to take the opportunity to go back and do a little bit of a response. In fact, it's sort of a double response, so it's a bit of a dialogue that we're going to create here. Okay, so there's lots of explanation about the how-tos, but I'm going to just walk you through it. So what I want people to do before we do anything else in this unit is to go back into the Padlet, and I think I had the link here somewhere. If I didn't, oh, it's in the document itself. To go back to the Padlet and find anybody's post. It doesn't really matter who's, just not your own. So the example I used, and I'll show that in a sec, it just happened to be one of the first ones that I saw in there when I was setting up this part of it. So you go back into the Padlet, you find somebody's post, and then you go to this Google Doc that I've created. You don't have to have a Google account and sign in. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. So you should be able to go right to the document, and hopefully it opens correctly for me. Okay, it does. I am not signed in, so it's just should be looking basically like you'll see it. Okay, so let's see, back to where we were. So what you want to do then is, in the Padlet, find someone's post that you think is interesting, and there might be some description about why the picture they posted reminds them of a setting in a particular story. There might be a lot of explanation, there might be not much explanation, doesn't really matter. So you want to pick one that you find interesting and just sort of comment on it. Again, maybe you take it in a totally different direction than what the person explained. Maybe there's very little explanation and you just kind of guess at what the connection is. There's no real right or wrong answer here, because it's, again, sort of like that atmospheric, right, sense that a place might evoke. So that's the reply part, relatively straightforward. But then you, as the author of that Padlet post, should be going into the document and looking to see if anybody has replied to your post, and then reply to that reply. Okay, he's confused? Let's just look at it. So we go into the document. Here's my example that I created. So I grabbed a picture, one of the earliest that I saw, which happened to be Rachel's. So I was able to just right-click in the Padlet and copy using the Control-C or copy, and then Control-V in the document here, and it pasted right in. It's pretty awesome. So then I post my thing here, and then, which Rachel has actually already done, which is cool. I faked a response from Rachel, right, which she clearly would not say. So she does like a reply to my reply. So anyway, I take her picture. In this case, because she provided an explanation, I sort of quote a little bit from her, and then I extend that thinking, or I suggest what it meant to me or how I feel about the picture and its connection to, in this case, the short story Cathedral. And then to round it all off, she comes in and does her reply. So thanks, Rachel, for doing that. It's great. It looks like, yeah, so Rachel has grabbed this one already from Marianne. Cool. Okay, so the first one, I'm not going to lie, the first one I saw in the Padlet happened to be Maddie's, which was, and maybe it still is, I don't know if she's gone back, it's just a picture of a tree with Araby. So I know Araby, the story, and I've seen trees before, but I couldn't quite figure out what the connection was. And so I didn't use that one because I didn't want to make it even more complicated example, but it actually would be a good one to use because Maddie's thinking about whatever that connection is wasn't elucidated in the Padlet, which is okay, Maddie. You don't have to go back and change it. But it would be fun then for one of her classmates to grab her picture and then say, like, there was no explanation, but what this made me think of, or one possible connection to Araby would be, and then fill in the blank. And then I think it's interesting for Maddie to come in and say, what? That's totally not what I meant. Or, yeah, that's a possibility too. Or, you know, probably something more on the positive side of those two. So we're working in the same document here, so you'll see it fill out as we go. So just be careful to kind of separate yours. Maybe mark your name just so they're easy to find, right? So as we go, so now Marianne would want to come in and do a little reply to Rachel's, which was a reply to Marianne's post, which is, again, confusing to say, but kind of easier when you see it laid out. I used the little insert horizontal line feature here just to block out mine, so we could do the same down here once Marianne got back in and, you know, did her reply. Okay, so that's a lot of talking and a lot of explanation for a thing that probably won't take you tons and tons of time. But like I said, this unit is a series of more, but I think smaller, shorter exercises that we're doing. Okay, so that gets us into actually Unit 4. So read the yellow wallpaper. Use this Padlet, totally separate, as you're reading, to post some ideas about important themes in the work. So this is really simple. It's not a mobile thing. You just do it as you're reading. On the computer even, which is usually faster because you can just type stuff. You can add your name to it, of course, right? But just some basic ideas, some phrases, maybe a little short quotation or a snippet from the book. So again, do it as you're reading so you don't have to go back and kind of double up on this thing. So that's like a brainstorming phase. Yeah, the boring comprehension quiz, do that. And now we're going to look at the original publication, or at least a digital reproduction of that original, as it was first, of the story as it was first printed in the New England Magazine back in 1892. So there's a couple of links here to get you there. If one doesn't work, you can try the other one. There's a couple of hints of things to look for in the pictures that I've provided, pictures being an obvious one. What comes after the story in the magazine. And now what I want you to do, kind of the main work for this unit once you've done that introductory stuff, is to use this discussion board to kind of compare the two editions or two versions of the story. The one as we have it in our textbook and the one as it appears or as it appeared in its original version. And so you're not looking for like major, like a whole paragraph was cut or a sentence is different or big things like that. Textually, they're more or less the same, although this one, Jane question mark, that's a good one to look for. He says, totally giving it away. So look for differences, and then using, you know, your own reading of the story, but also potentially this brainstorming Padlet for themes, try to connect some of those differences to thematic things going on in the story. And this might be challenging to envision before you look at it, but once you get into the story and see some of these differences, right, and have a sense of what the key themes are in the work, you might be able to connect some of those what might seem like trivial differences to potentially really different readings that we arrive to, depending on which version we read. So we say we've all read the same story, but if I read the one with the pictures, for example, the illustrations, and you read the one in our textbook, no illustrations, could we arrive at slightly different understandings or different readings of the story? So I think it's a really interesting exercise, basically comparative, but on a really what seems trivial level, but looking to see how those trivial differences can potentially have really, really significant impact on how we read the story. Okay, like it or not, YouTube allows me 15 minutes and usually a little bit more because I post so much of this stuff. So congrats if you've made it this far. Unit 4, again, right, packed with lots of stuff, but hopefully kind of interesting. And again, per my initial statements, hoping to develop this real sense of community and dialogue and conversation that I think really is what marks a great honors class. All right, questions, comments, be in touch with me, and I'll talk with everybody soon. Have a great Friday.